We are here, ladies and gentlemen, with the Carls Jr. or Hardys, depending on which side of the country you find yourself in.
Yep.
If you guys are a visual watcher, listener. Yeah.
Today's episode is sponsored by Hardy's Breakfast. No, it is powered by Hardy's Breakfast. That is for sure.
Can you imagine we get to the point where we're like that? Like that's a power play by a podcast is get a sponsorship from a restaurant or something, and it's like,
oh yeah,
dude, yeah. Every episode, I just eat. Today's episode is brought to you by the new Taco Bell Flamin' Hot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, if anybody out there is listening, I'm Hardy's biggest fan. I love their breakfast. It is unmatched in my opinion. But anyway, that's another ranking for another podcast. So today's episode is really presented to you by Flippy Disc Golf. Thanks again, Flippy and Aaron, for all you do for the podcast. Visual watchers can look at Robbie right now with his new sweet polo.
Heyo. Yeah, we heading straight over to Flippy. Thanks for sponsoring and everything they're doing. But we have a new line that officially launched yesterday. As for those listening on the day of this launch, the Robbie C line, we've got 5 awesome prints, actually 6 awesome prints. We ended up throwing a last minute one in there that's kind of a classic, because when I worked with my designer to get, I'm calling the wrong sleeve. When I worked with my designer to get my original Robbie Birdie R, he kind of built it in 3 different iterations. And so there's one with says Robbie C Disc Golf, one just the R, and then another that has a full basket integrated into it.
Oh, cool.
But if you anytime you watch one of my videos, you'll see it in the lower right portion of the video, like the full image. And Aaron was like, hey, what if we incorporate that image? Because I've never seen you use it anywhere else. I was like, that is correct. So just shows Aaron always trying to evolve, always trying to make things possible. So if you guys are looking to support what we're doing here on the channel, always head over to flippydiscgolf.com. There's in the bag stuff, there's foundation stuff, there's Swanky Disc Golf, there's Robbie C. And if you're an upcoming creator and you're listening to this podcast, reach out, because they love doing custom merch. One of my favorite things that I think they don't advertise very often. And Brad, this kind of blows my mind, because you've been working in business long enough to know, when you want to do merchandise, it gets a little crazy.
Yes.
But the no minimums on custom orders is insane.
Yeah, and that goes for anyone who's running a league or a tournament. All that stuff's available. So again, there's ways to contact them on their website. Make sure you check out all of the things they have available, and let them know that In the Bag sent you. That's always important. So thank you, Flippy. Thanks for all you do for us. And speaking of Flippy, the discs I threw today, Robbie, we're not Flippy at all.
That's what we like to hear.
So yeah, we threw some overstable. We're on an overstable kick right now. We threw some overstable mid ranges.
We did.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Love for all discs, right? All disc love. And we'll bring in today's person. I'm very excited. Again, I don't really know what's going on with the bag ahead of time usually. No different here. It was a typical windy, rainy, gross day that it seems to be when I'm throwing these discs. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see where these fit in. So if you're ready, Robbie, let's bring Jack in and talk a little bit about this today.
Dude, let's bring him in. On In the Bag, we've got Mr. Jack. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Dude, absolutely a pleasure. Jack is in a unique scenario, guys, where one of our questions, and so Brad gets the bag sent to him minutes before we actually start. Try to keep him in the dark, honestly, as much as I can. I feel like part of it is it allows you to objectively test discs versus oh, this is supposed to replace a crave, and I know how a crave flies. So blank. Yeah. But Jack, one of the questions we ask is, what part of your bag are you most confident in, and what part of your bag are you least confident in? And this is something that I think is very interesting, and really the main reason Jack is here is we ask, what part of your bag are you least confident in? And Jack, how'd you answer that?
Yeah, so I answered both questions the same way, with the answer of all of it. The reason that Robbie, I reached out to you is that I'm currently in New England, and I've been playing New England disc golf the last 4 years while I've been at college. But I am moving to Texas, and I think that my bag is very well rounded for New England golf. But I'm going to a place in the country where golf is a lot different. And I don't know what I should put in. I don't know what I should take out, so it's a little bit of, if I was staying here, I feel great about all of it. And since I'm going there, I don't feel great about any of it, really.
Okay. Well, that is good to know. It's a good preface for what we're getting ready to do. But before we completely dive into looking at your bag, how it is currently, and how we can maybe talk about it in regard to Texas golf, Robbie, let's walk through Jack on, let's get to know Jack as a disc golfer.
Absolutely.
First.
So, Jack, we line you up in an open field, which is very rare in New England disc golf, but we line you up in an open field. And we said, hey, we're going to put a basket X distance out. How far do you feel like you can comfortably reach it consistently on backhand and forehand?
Backhand, I would say comfortably around 375. I can push a disc farther than that, but that's where I'll just feel comfortable without needing to, try and do something crazy. And then forehands right now, I've sort of gotten it back to 325. When I first started playing, I was only forehands, and then developed a backhand and was sort of doing both, and then was introduced to the concept of the flex forehand and worked well for a little bit, but then got to a point that I completely lost my forehand. I was turfing everything over. Everything was a thrower. So I just gave up on it, and I've started to get it back. And I think we're back to about 325.
Okay. That is, gosh, there's so much in there. And man, there are so many people that can relate to, I was throwing good forehands. And then one day I got tempted by the max distance flex forehand and there she goes. So totally relate there. Okay. That's great distance. Great to know. If we put you on the putting green, and we said, all right, Jack, we're going to give you 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25, and 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making at each station?
Yeah, I feel confident saying 10 out of 10 from 15 feet. I know a lot of people like to throw in the whole, there's always that risk of missing that one. But I feel like at this point that risk isn't there. Unless there's weird footing or a branch in my way or something like that. But if it's just normal straight up 15 footer, I feel confident about that 100% of the time. 25 feet, probably between six or seven. Just sort of depends on the day. And then 40 feet is, and I'll sound like a broken record with every other guest you've had, but when you get to that 40 foot, it's just man, how are you feeling that day? I've had days where my step putt from that far just feels great, and other days that it's just no, we're hitting everywhere on the basket but the chains. So I think to sort of average out, I'm probably around three or four. To sort of average out the good with the bad.
Yeah, that's a question I would be very curious to ask Brody. Okay, we line you up, we give you 10 putts at each station. How many are you making at each station? That'd be a fun. Next time I end up at a pro event, I'm going to start talking to my friends there and be like, hey, so I need you to answer this question. Because I think I completely agree with you. Most of the folks we're going to have on this show are going to be it depends on the day, things like that. So awesome. Well, Jack, what'd you say is the biggest strength of your game as our final question?
Yeah, I would say that my biggest strength is that I feel just I have a really well-rounded game. I feel that especially as I've been developing my forehand back again. But it's one of those things that, when you're playing New England golf and you're playing some of these weird, tight, wooded holes, wooded courses, you just need to be able to do a lot. There's not just one thing that you can be good at that'll survive. You really need to develop a lot of different shots, different techniques, stuff like that. So I feel like there isn't one thing that I do particularly better than everything else, but I think I do a lot of things, a little above average.
Oh, that is fair. Now, as a question, because I want our comments to be able to help out a good bit here, and usually our comment sections are really helpful, honestly. Texas is massive, so arguably its own country, but that's neither here nor there. So with that being said, what part of Texas are you moving to?
Waco.
Okay. Awesome.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's where it's like, yeah, I just wanted to know what type of golf, because you have like Austin Golf kind of has everything, but you have like a massive property that is solely in the woods where there are tight wood lines, but it also has some distance to it. And then you head out to the Met Center where it's wide open golf with tight OB. Like, there is so much difference. And I think Texas, like, honestly, the golf in Texas is so clean because it really does have everything. You have your California Open, but you also have woods that exist. So one of the main concepts that we're going to walk through today as we're talking through this bag is how people get their distance. So when you're playing woods golf, power Hyzers are effective. Obviously, we look at someone like a Calvin Heimberg who doesn't necessarily throw a ton of Hyzer flips and just blasts his eagles on a little bit of Annie flat through wood lines. And wow, that's why Calvin is dangerous. But then you have a lot of other people like Isaac Robinson who throw Hyzer flips like a boss. You have Kevin Jones who throw Hyzer flips like a boss, who also play really well in the woods. So it is, and this statement will kind of feel a little odd because you also have Jonesboro, which is wide open, that Kevin Jones plays really well at. But in the wind, when you're leaning on a lot of Hyzer flips or flippy discs for your raw distance, it gets real squirrely. And where Texas brutalizes people, and I can speak from experience because my first time I played in Texas, I played in 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. And I was throwing Calvin destroyers and they were turning like significantly. Honestly, it's where I met Apollo Disc Golf. Is we suffered through that round together. We watched two trees physically get ripped out of the ground while we were playing our round. It was insane.
Holy
Glad
cow.
the TD didn't call that round off. JK, so I'm never going back to that tournament. Anyways, so that kind of wind, insane. Like getting used to playing on that wind, that's not what we're talking about. But 20 to 30 mile an hour winds where you're not covered by trees and the trees aren't like creating extra wind tunnels as well, because that's New England golf as well. Y'all are going to get some wind that's going to come through the trees, things like that.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about, especially when we get to the recommendation, stability. So what I'm very curious on a lot of these flights is release angle as we talk about your bag, because that is going to inform a lot. If you're like, oh, this Crave is super flippy, but I love it because I can just put it on some Hyzer and it stands up straight. Okay, that's good information. So does that make sense from like a vantage point?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. So let's start with your putters. And I mean, from a guy who doesn't live in Texas, you're very Texas-y in your putters right off the bat.
Yeah.
So putting with blue bonnets?
Yes, I'm putting. I've got three of them actually. Two of them are V2. One of them is V1. The V1 one I actually like a lot more for putting. The V1 is like their gummier plastic, but if you just hold it in your hand, you don't really feel like it's that gummy. Like the difference between Z Flex and Z, like when you're holding a Z Flex Raptor compared to a Z Raptor, like you feel in your hand the disc flexing. With the V1 to the V2, you don't really feel that. So this is the one that like I predominantly use, but then I have this V2 that's max weight. I normally putt with only max weight, but this one's only like 171. But I have this one that's V2 and max weight just for headwind situations, something that isn't going to get affected as much, and then just a backup. So.
Okay. So yeah, blue bonnets. Jason putts with blue bonnets now.
Yeah, he does. He's deadly accurate with them. I will give him that.
Yeah, the blue bonnet is a putter that I think we're going to hear more and more about, because I know there are so many people who are Lone Star putters that love the blue bonnets. Okay, so I'm going to go from there. We're going to get on your one speed. You got the Dillo?
I do.
What are you using the Dillo for?
Dillo gang.
This is personally, it's my favorite one speed. I tried a polecat. I've got really tiny hands, so there are a lot of discs that really aren't that deep that feel insanely deep in my hand. So yeah, but anyway, I've tried the polecat, tried the glitch, but I really like the armadillo. It's my primary like standstill backhand approach disc from like 150 and in. Just feel really comfortable just putting it on a line, and also feeling comfortable throwing it low, because it does a really good job at sort of just like hovering over the ground, not just sort of turfing into it. And being able to let something slide up, because, you know, up here you have lots of baskets on cliffs and things that it's like, hey, we can't just let something sort of fade into the basket. We need to play the ground. So
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And alpha plastic, so it's a little more stable,
Right.
than it's not Bravo. What's their base?
V1 and V2.
Yeah, the Vector. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Jumping up, you have another disc. You have four from this company in your bag. I got confused it for a second because, like of the plastics underneath, but for some reason I was reading it like instead of RPM, their discs, the plastics make no sense to me why they chose the plastic names they did. But once I got there, I got there. So, you have a Ruru.
I do.
In your bag. What's the Ruru do for you?
This is, how do I describe it? I used to bag, how it started is I used to bag a 2020 Macbeth Luna, the Z Swirl. It was a one that I got completely clear, and I had it dyed by my dye sponsor. I loved it, but I basically realized this, you know, I don't want to have to spend, you know, upwards of $50 on a disc to replace it. You know, when it gets too beat in, if I lose it. So I was really looking for a putter that flew like that. And that one for me was just a really pretty much neutral putter. Like, I mean, if I wanted to really rip into it, you know, I could, and it would get like a little bit of drift to the left. I'm left-handed. So for everybody that's listening to this and that sounds like crazy, I'm left-handed. So throwing it, get a little drift to the left. But when thrown just nice and smooth and steady, just sort of laser straight. And so during the New England Disc Golf Expo, Robbie, I saw you there in the parking lot that morning at Marshall Street. I went in, and that month they were doing 25% off RPM. I was like, sure, 25% off disc. Let's give it a shot. And got the Ruru, and I love it. It's been in my bag in that slot. Is just that straight putter without needing to manipulate the angle. Just throw it flat, it goes straight sort of putter.
Okay. That's a solid grab. That is, and that's the beauty, guys, of checking out some other manufacturers and things like that. And yeah, so Ruru, fantastic. We've got an Atlas team member who is sponsored by RPM or loves some RPM. I cannot remember their setup, but
it's
Ben. Is it Ben?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but
just to plug them, even though I'm not sponsored by them real quick. They've got some of the best feeling plastic for a small do-it-themselves, making their own discs manufacturer, in my opinion. Yeah, because, you know, you find, I mean, there are a lot of the smaller companies that, you know, are getting made by somebody else that, you know, is known for their plastic. So it's like, obviously it's great. But for a company that's, no, we're doing this ourselves, feels phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm here for it. So you've got two atoms in your bag. One thing, if you guys are visually watching this and the bag is on the screen for you, I appreciate Jack kind of adjusted his flight numbers on the discs to more accurately fit what he thought they fly like. And so when I first saw this atom, one of the atoms, like where it is, I was like, whoop, that's not an atom. But I'm very curious. So you have one in the proton sparkle as well as an electron firm. So how these seem to fly very different according to the flight chart.
Very different. This electron firm atom I've had in the bag for a year and a half now. First of all, I think that the flight numbers for the base plastic atoms are not right. I think that the base plastic atoms are what they put on the Proton one, the 3301. And I confirmed this because I got a brand new electron firm atom and went and was throwing it in the field, and it really is like, it's a straight, but it has a hook at the end of it. If you throw it into some headwind, that's where you might see some of that negative 0.50. But if it's sort of calm conditions and you throw it, it's really more like a 3301. But anyway, this one I've had in the bag for over a year and a half, or about a year and a half. So it's just gotten really, really beat up. So this is that dead straight putter that I'm manipulating with Hyzer, or I'm throwing turnovers. This gets some insane late flip. So, if you can throw it on some Hyzer soft and it's still going to push and get some turn out of it at the end. So that's the Electron one.
Okay. And how's the Proton Sparkle fly?
The Proton Sparkle, and this is not just this one. I have 4 or 5 of these that all fly like this. Very beefy. Like, I have a buddy of mine who was the one that actually turned me on to the Atom, and he bags harps, and he like calls it a harp light. And I was like, "Are you serious?" And I threw it, and it's like, yeah, like it is. It's much beefier than the flight numbers would suggest. So like, I mean, this is something that like I throw on, like Anheuser angles when I have like a 250 to 270 foot, wooded, like need to flex something around. I'll throw this on Anheuser and it will come out of it at the end and make the full flex, even out of a putter.
Wow.
So yeah.
Okay. Are you left-handed?
I am left-handed. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I just, as you were describing the flight and looking at all that, I was like, okay. Because the first one you were like, and it'll hook. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I see the subtleties, my man.
The number I've played tournaments before with people that like 9 holes in, like they're like telling my disc to get stable, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot it spins the other way." I'm like, I'm playing not. You've been watching me throw for 9 holes. Like, what do you mean?
That's fair. Yeah. I get it. I played with a lefty, and same thing. It was like he threw a shot, and I was like, "Whoa, did you throw a backhand turnover there?" And he was like, "No, I just threw a forehand." And I was like, "Oh, okay, nice." So, Copperheads, very interesting, especially because I feel like the Copperhead was their attempt, because they had the Bull Snake in their lineup for Lone Star, and then they came out with the Copperhead. So for me, the Copperhead was supposed to be their like approach disc. It was supposed to be their vibe there,
like zone.
Yeah. I think they were taking a shot at the pick with the whole front track and everything on it. And I'm okay. People can try to touch it. That's fantastic. I'm here for it. So knowing that your Atom is like a harp light, how does it complement / work with the Copperheads?
Yeah. So the Copperheads, the Copperheads are mostly for forehand. I do backhand them occasionally. And I do forehand the Atom occasionally. But more often than not, Atom's backhand, Copperheads are forehand. Okay. I put the Copperhead in the bag. I used to bag a Jawbreaker zone that I had beaten up, and it was just, it was that perfect disc, I mean, we all have them, that perfect disc. And I was like, you know what? The minute that this thing gets lost, I am in big trouble, because I did lose it one time warming up for a tournament and just had my ESP zone in the bag, and it was not good. Like I was not dialed in the way I needed to be. So I heard that the Copperhead was not quite as stable as a zone. And so I was like, well, it's beaded, which is interesting, and it's a 3-speed, not a 4-speed, but I'll give it a shot. And I've been really, really liking it a lot, for those forehand approaches. Brand new, it's about what my Jawbreaker zone was. And then once it gets beat in, it can turn into, it still has integrity on that forehand. So I can still throw it hard, but really get just some like laser straight forehands with it, which are just really, really nice.
Okay. And what's curious to me is you went with the V1 plastic on that as well instead of a premium plastic. Is there a particular reason for the base over the premium? Do you like that grip?
I like the grip. And when we get to the mids, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I don't have like that premium plastic overstable approach disc in the bag because of one of the discs that I have there. That just feels more comfortable. So like for those really like power forehands, that's not what I'm throwing the copperhead for. It's really for just like approaches, probably about 200 at the max is where I'm throwing it. If I need that overstable forehand, that isn't, like we're looking at a driver, farther than that, then I'm going with something else. So,
yeah, I'm going to guess the Pyro.
Yeah.
So let's dive straight into it. So the Pyro, that's where I like when looking at the bag, I was thinking to myself, okay, he doesn't have that overstable putt and approach disc bag slot, but I was not wanting to jump in and recommend it because I know a lot of people do use the Pyro for that slot.
Yeah. What Simon Lizotte does with the Pyro is otherworldly. Like this is not a 540 2.5. Like the flight number suggests it's not as overstable as a rock. It is the beefiest, I would say beefiest mid-range feeling mid that I've thrown. MVP makes the deflector, but that feels more fairway drivery to me. I guess the justice is there too with the Pyro, but it is a beefy mid. And so like I was talking about, when I need that premium, power forehand but isn't that, fairway driver distance, I'm going with the Pyro instead.
Yeah, I agree with you. Every time I've thrown the Pyro, I like it. I'm just like, man, this is so beefy. I put the Bobcat in that realm too. I know the Bobcat's not super overstable, but yeah, all those discs feel, and there's definitely a place for them. And I think, Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, when you get to Texas, you're dealing with a lot of wind and open field. You're going to really love that side of the overstable mid range is much more. So
for sure.
So you obviously love the Rock 3. If anybody that can see your chart there, we won't spend a ton of time on your Rock 3s just because if you like a Rock 3, you like a Rock 3. It's just some people like a Buzz, some people like a Rock 3. Just run us through like the differences between them, like super quick, just an overview.
Yeah. So this Blue Champ one is my most overstable one. It is one of the oddballs that it is post Macbeth and embossed Rock 3 that actually flies like its flight numbers. Which I recognize is, sort of an oddball. I have Halo Rock 3s as backups to this, because I've tried those and know that those are just as overstable. So when this gets to be too much, but it's one of those weird ones that it's like, oh, this actually flies the way you're advertising it to. That's interesting. Then I have this red one that I found in a used bin. That's, actually a 3-time Champ Rock 3 that is really really seasoned for me already, and so this is like a straight to just like slightly overstable mid for me, or one that I can put on a touch of Annie and it's just going to sort of hold straight the whole time. And then I have these two of the 2021 Glow Pro Rock 3s, which are just amazing, and weird, but amazing. Like these brand new are pretty just straight. But as you season them in, they season in, because of that, they season in much quicker than if you're trying to cycle other rocks, because they already started as relatively straight ones. So I've stockpiled on backups of these. So I've been, cycling these through. So this one, the one that's a little bluer, is closer to new. This is one that I think I called like a 5.5 -1.1, or a 5.4 -1.1. When I first got it, it was like a 5.4.0.1, and it's just gotten a little beat up enough that it has a little bit of drift to it. And then this purple one is the one I've had the longest, that I've really seasoned in and is nice and understable.
So, and sorry to jump in here, Robbie, but my question, and I'm asking this question because I have a similar feeling. I'm just curious if you think the same. You have that rock through that's like very beat in, that glow rock 3. I'm sorry, the one you have listed as that one. That's, I'm guessing you're like Hyzer flip, like flip up, maybe you need to turn, that sort of thing. And then you have your uplink, which is obviously more overstable than that, or understable than that. So when do you choose the uplink versus that really beat in rock 3? I know what my answer is because I have a very similar setup in my bag, but I'm curious what your answer is.
Yeah. So I started bagging the uplink, and
smart choice.
Right. Of course, obviously. But when you start playing up here, you find that there are a ton of like borderline stupid tight lines on holes up here in the woods. And I started bagging the uplink to be that more understable mid, but found it was even more understable than I was thinking. And so I love having this for, it's like, hey, this is a dead straight 200-foot hole, and the gap is like this wide, like about as wide as a disc. And I can just throw this so slow and focus so much on hitting the gap, but it is glidey enough and understable enough that it's still just going to sort of hold that straight the whole way. Then there's some, more like get out of jail instances that I use this. I really like this for patent pendings because of how understable it is. And then I just manipulate the angle depending on if I need it to go straight, right, or over to the left. And then also some like get out of jail, like little chop forehands as well. So
there we are. Check, and check for all the reasons I use uplink. The biggest thing for me, I feel like I go to grab something like understable in my bag. Because I have a hex that's kind of beat in that it's not flippy per se, but it will turn at like a late turn, but I have to hit it really hard. And I find that if there's a hole where like accuracy needs to be really important, I'm grabbing the uplink and powering down so I can focus on my release and making sure I'm hitting my line. So it's exactly, and I love the get out of jail free, like tiny forehand with that. Yeah. If I need it to go left for me, cause I'm right-handed, I love that. So, okay. Just checking. Cause it looked like that's what your setup was. Yeah. So just making sure.
Yeah. And shout out to Brian over at Cross Dyes. He hooked me up with this. That's my alma mater now. That's new. Gordon's logo. He was able to put on that with the blue. So wanted to make sure he gets a shout out.
I love it. So jumping up to your distance drivers, you've got 6 in the back and 6 in the back, 2 duplicates. What, walk us through we'll start, I'm assuming, how does the charger fly for you? And we'll use that as a baseline.
Okay. So the charger is my consistent, not needing to hit something perfectly, farthest flying disc in the bag. So it flies, like everybody was saying, like it's a glidier, less overstable destroyer. And I find that to be the case. Really just like comfortable throwing this. I could probably comfortably, without doing anything too crazy, get this out to 400. But it does take a little more of like, okay, hit that perfectly. But yeah, this is like just my go-to. I need distance driver.
Okay. So not too much turn, like it's not burning over, but it's also not fading out too hard on you either. Yeah. So what about the Falcon? And then you have a Wraith that is on the understable side, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Falcon, from Millennium, the Millennium Falcon, if you would,
love it.
It's in the Sirius plastic, which is, we all know that's Star plastic. It's pretty domey. I'm not sure if you can hear it. It's got some dome to it. And this is if, put it on the right amount of Hyzer, hit it with the right nose angle. This is the disc that it's like, this is the farthest flying disc in my bag. Like this, or if, I need distance and I've got tailwind, I'm going with this. There are a couple courses up here that are on some old ball golf courses that are a little more open. So sometimes you'll experience that. So if I've got tailwind and I need distance, I'm going with this. The Charger, compared to the Charger, this I feel good about in like neutral or not super tailwind, but also feel good about it in headwind as well. So they complement each other well. that way.
Okay. So how about your rates? Where do your rates slot in for there?
Yeah. So this is my understable one. This is one of the Climo 12 times star ones. It's gotten really, really beaten up. And it is, yeah, it's a really understable distance driver now. Not like mega understable, not like Mamba understable, but like Fission Wave understable. And I say that because that's what I have as a backup if something were to happen to this. Would be the Fission Wave. So,
yeah. And that's something I found to be true with race in general is that rates start like, it's funny that the Charger exists because when I think of like, oh, I want something that flies like an easier destroyer, race were always the answer for me for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is when I have a beat-in Charger, it still flies true to what a Charger does. It just has a lot more. It's like when you take an Eagle and get it really beat in, it has more turn, but it still has its fade at the end. I feel like rates, once they beat in, they just stop fading. Like it is, they just turn really flippy. And I have been grateful to put rates back in the bag recently. And I knew exactly which rates to go to be like, haha, you are perfect. Yeah. So, totally get that. That is a great grab. So then you have an overstable Wraith and a compliment.
So this is one of the bottom stamp rates. And I found with all of the bottom stamp ones, they've got a ton of dome on them. And they fly more true to the flight numbers. So really what this is just like a slower version of the Charger. But it has a little more hook on forehands compared to the Charger. All of the drivers in my bag, fairway and distance, I throw on both backhand and forehand. So yeah, but so this just turns a little bit more on a forehand than the Wraith does. This bottom stamp Wraith has a little more hook to it.
Okay. Curious. So heading out to your RPM, the Kahoo looks like is it just a faster? Why the Kahoo alongside the Wraith?
The Kahoo is more like a nuke. It's got some overstability. It really does. Not like unthrowable overstability. But I used to bag one of the 2021 Ezra nukes, not the Tour Series one, but the one when he signed, that were the crystal ones, not the Z ones, that had like the nuke cloud on it. And this is just really, really similar to it. It's just like a nice overstable distance driver that you can still feels throwable to get distance. You know, if you're throwing into a headwind, if you're throwing forehand that you needed to push. Yeah, so that's when I go to the Kahoo instead of the Wraith. It's a little more overstable, which makes it and faster, which makes it a little bit less controllable. So if I'm like, no, I really need to control where this lands. I don't care if it's 40 short. I need to know where it lands. I'm going with the Wraith. But if it's like, no, I need that extra, 30 to 40 feet to get closer to the basket, and I've got wide range to throw it, I'll just turn farther to the right or farther to the left and throw it instead. So,
Okay. So rounding it out then, the Katare utility. Yeah,
this is the beefiest thing in the world. They call it a 12503. It's not. It is. Yeah, this is. I used to bag a Lucid X Enforcer, one of the Ricky Lucid X Enforcers, and couldn't find many of them. Was finding like the Chameleon Enforcers, which I didn't like very much, or the Chameleon Sparkle or whatever. And so this was another grab at the New England Disc Golf Expo that I was like, oh, that's nice. That's nice and overstable, very flat. Eric Oakley, actually, when he switched over to Infinite, he did a run of these with RPM, that it was just going to be like his beef distance driver. So,
okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, coming down to fairway drivers, we're going to land in fairway drivers, but we're going to land around the 7-speed. So, I want to start with we're going to go like under, over, Undertaker, because then I want to see Yeah, I just want to get a feel for where we're going with this. Your Chupacabra and your Felon. Chupacabra is such a good disc, super overstable. Like a slow. Is it basically a slower form of your Qatar?
Yep. Yeah. Basically, when I was, gosh, I don't know, a couple of years ago, Robbie, when you were building your bag with Innova, and you made those, and they were phenomenal, very like informative videos, like where you were on the field, you drew the arrow, put the arrows in and all of that. And I basically started then with like a 24 disc bag where I basically had like those 5 arrows in each class, but then was like, you know what, I want something that's just like utility overstable with everything as well. And so that's what the Chupacabra is.
Okay. And then what's the Felon do for you?
Yeah, so this is one of the first run Saki Bomb Orbit Felons, not the Saki Felon, just the like when he signed ones. And I would equate this to like a Sexton Firebird. Like it's just like it's that usable overstable 9-speed that you can feels like, okay, I can actually throw this and it like go somewhere. The Chupacabra, when you throw it, it doesn't go anywhere. It just goes to the ground. But this Orbit Felon, it's gotten a little seasoned in because it's also over a year old, but it flies still pretty close to what it was when I got it new. So I feel comfortable continuing to throw it, having backups of it. But yeah, it's like that, just workable, usable, overstable 9-speed.
Okay. Then the Insanity and the Impulse on the understable side.
Yes. Yeah. So the Impulse to me is what a Roadrunner is supposed to be every single time. And I say that because I got a Roadrunner once, one of the Barsby Star ones, that you could have convinced me that it was a Thunderbird. And then, yeah, so there was a stretch in my disc golf life that I was bagging only gyro. It was actually around the same time that Hunter was, because I was like, I had also been a basher of gyro. And so I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. And I found that this is just, it's a really nice, actually truly understable 9-speed. Good for rollers, but also in the woods, good for Hyzer stand-ups, that get some turns still at the end. Really like it for like turnover forehands. Like I can throw it really nice and slow, and it'll turn like that. So.
Okay. And how's the Insanity compare to that? Because I think the Insanity is one, we talk about it a lot. It's a misrepresented gyro.
Yeah. Conrad called it his roller disc, and everybody thought it was as unstable as the Impulse is. But I think it actually is pretty true to its flight numbers. And I call this my woods distance driver. So a lot of times when I'm in the woods, and we talked briefly about distance in the woods. There are a lot of times you'll find when you play up here and you're in the woods all the time that it is worth sacrificing the 40 feet to make sure that it's going straighter, make sure the disc is going straighter, and being willing to land short and take a risk on a 40-footer. Then, okay, that's going to get to the basket, but it's also going to hyzer out and skip, and you're going to be in this brush like 60 feet away that if you can even get to your disc, you have to throw over the top. So when I'm in the woods, I rarely actually throw my distance drivers. That's why I have a lot more fairways than distance drivers in the bag, because when I'm in the woods, my 9-speeds are my distance drivers. So the Insanity is just like that, my most used workable fairway for those instances. I can throw it flat and get some drift. I can put it on Annie and have it drift, but like pan out. You can throw it on Hyzer and get it to stand up. Also throw it on enough Hyzer and slow enough that it pops up but never gets off Hyzer. It's just really workable. I really resonated with Brad when he was talking about the lift being his favorite forehand disc, because the Insanity is basically just like a gyro lift. And I really like it a lot for forehands too. It was actually the disc that got my forehand back, because I was like, okay, I need to be throwing neutral to understable things to get my forehand back, instead of trying to throw overstable stuff that isn't going to go anywhere. And I turned to the Insanity, and it's been in my bag ever since.
Yeah, I like it. I love that, like just a touch of understability because I have a Hyzer release forehand, and it just, Yeah, you can concentrate on, and it's a slower disc, right? You can concentrate on your form and like that release point at the end and making sure you're getting the spin on the disc versus like just trying to like yeet it as hard as you possibly can and turning it over into the dirt. Been there, my friend. Yeah. Completely get you.
Not fun.
Absolutely. So the Craves, I'm curious with the Craves because this will kind of be the second to last step of like seeing what Brad threw today. So where do your Craves fit in alongside your Insanity?
Yeah. So the Craves I have both of them are in fission plastic. This one is my older one. It's a little more seasoned. I feel like fission is the best, gyro plastic for, cycling. I feel like it actually beats up a little faster. I found with like Neutron and Proton, like they take a while to beat up, which is great because you get that same flight of out of that disc for a while. But when you're trying to put multiple of something in the bag, having the fission I've found is really good. So this probably flies like my Insanity when thrown flat. It's probably like my Insanity, but I actually started bagging the Crave because I found like just having the Insanity, like there's sometimes I don't want a disc to go that far, but I can't get a mid to go as far as I need. And I was like, okay, I've got a serious gap between my 5-speed and this 9-speed. And so that's when I started bagging the Crave. So this one is just a little more beat in, flies a lot like my Insanity, but as a 6.5 or 7 speed. And then this blue one is actually brand new, because I found that this one was getting 2 beat in, and the one that I had below it was also getting 2 beat in, pulled that one out, slid this over and put this one in. And this one is just pretty much like dead straight when thrown flat. But honestly, I call it like a brand new fission Crave, like the buzz of fairway drivers. Like this thing, if I put it on Hyzer, it's not really flipping up. Brand new, and it'll hold that for a little bit, till it seasons in a little too much. But if I throw this on Hyzer, it's really just going to hold that and carry that. If I put it on Annie, it's not really going to come out of it. It's a really, really useful fairway driver, and really useful slot to have in the bag when you're playing in the woods all the time.
Yeah. And okay. So the Undertaker is sort of my last question mark, because what does it do for you?
Yeah. So the Undertaker, I had a Thunderbird at this spot, and there's too much overlap between the Thunderbird and the Orbit Felon. And I was like, what I need is a not really overstable, but like slightly overstable 9-speed. Because like I said, don't throw distance drivers in the woods, or try to not do that when I can. So something that is just a little bit more overstable than like my Insanity is, but not quite as overstable as the Felon, and something that I can throw on backhands, and when it's brand new, like it just really just sort of holds straight and just has a slight fade, doesn't really get the S out of the -1-2 instead. And also really, really great on forehands for that same thing, like that Orbit Felon. It is a Felon. It's going to be overstable at the end. This one isn't going to be as overstable, but I can throw it on forehands and not really get much S out of it. Just get it to go straight and just have a nice, soft little fade at the end.
Okay. So, okay. That makes me question the Huya, that one.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So just much more overstable.
This is like a 7-speed PD is the best way to describe it. Okay. So they advertise as 7502. I put for it in the bag, I think I put it at 7403, because I really found that it's like a 7-speed PD, which I think is really, really useful, and to have something like that, but brand new, it's relatively overstable. It beats in a little bit, but not enough that it's really going to change how it flies. So yeah, that's how I describe it. Okay. Not quite. It's almost like between Orbit Felon and Chupacabra as a 7-speed. So like my bag really, it's like a bunch of like peaks and valleys through my fairways, like trying to have as much as many gaps covered, but instead of having like slow fairway, fast fairway for everything, just sort of like bounces up and down all the way through.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that, to preface Brad's conversation, a lot of the discs, it sounds like there were a lot of, when I throw it flat, it does this, and it has a little bit of turn. It has as we, once again, the heart of this was like, as we head to Texas disc golf and you have more open wind, you're going to find a lot of those flat shots are going to get a lot more squirrely, because if it's like, if you've got a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind, you try to throw that disc flat, which is the goal. If we throw it flat and it gets up a little bit at all, that 20-mile-an-hour left or right crosswind, all of a sudden, like, boom, it's taken off in that direction. So,
and sorry to cut you off, Robbie, but I should add, I call it jack flat. You guys have talked about it. Like, nobody really throws like flat. So my flat is just like let's see if I can show it here. Like this, the slightest little bit of Hyzer. So that's also why, like, my fairways are a little more understable dominant as opposed to overstable, because stuff that is more understable for someone that really is throwing flat, or especially someone that's throwing their natural flat, is on Hyzer. My natural flat just has a tick of Hyzer to it. So
yeah, and that makes sense. So Brad, we had you try 2 discs today. Are you seeing the gap where I was seeing it?
Yes.
Okay. So what 2 discs do we have you try today?
All right. So I tried the Orbit Glory, and I tried the Neutron Terra today.
Okay.
So I'm kind of seeing where Robbie, I get where Robbie's putting down here. I think this makes a lot of sense moving to the Texas situation, because I mean, from the outside looking in, it looks like you want your Undertaker to be something, but it's not quite there. It's what it seems like from the outside. So as far as feel, I was talking about feel first. I actually had a Terra in the bag for a minute. I took it out because I was always reaching for either my Grackle or my Phoenix, and the Terra's like kind of right in between those two for me. So I took it out because if I'm not throwing something regularly, I'm not putting it in my bag. But I love how it feels. It feels great in the hand. It's comfortable. The Glory, I loved a lot of things about the Glory. The thing I can't, like, that's just kind of bugging me, I think it's just my personal grip, or maybe it's this actual Glory. There's like a little bit of a flashing issue at one particular spot on this Glory that's bothering me. Not here, just here. I don't know what it is. So I had to be very cognizant of where I held this. So I think it's just this particular disc, but they both feel really good in the hand. There's a definite difference in kind of like the lip here, which is fine. And for visual people, you can kind of see there versus that. This one's like a little bit more, I guess, gradual, whereas the Glory has a little bit more of an abrupt angling toward where the flashing is. So that's feel, Robbie. So I'm open to your questions on my field testing.
Yeah. So when you got out there, you said it was raining and windy today. Classic field testing conditions. Mm-hmm. So how did it feel like it reacted in extreme? Like, were you able to throw it in any crosswinds or anything like that?
Yeah. I was able to throw it. I specifically threw it, ironically enough, and all the winds, because I just wanted to see, when I think overstable, I'm starting to see more and more like the purpose of like that very overstable disc or mostly overstable disc. So I threw it in tailwind, I threw it in headwind, and I threw it in crosswind. What I will say for both of these discs, they still were overstable discs for me. And no matter what wind I threw them in, obviously the tailwind and the headwind were I could tell the biggest difference. But in a headwind specifically, the Glory stayed more true to what I wanted an overstable disc to be. The Terra was still overstable, but depending on the level of headwind I was getting, I did see like a little, not a little flip, but it didn't want to come back and have that fade as quickly as the Glory did still. So it was very interesting to see like just that little moment when it was a little higher headwind that the Terra started to fail on its like super overstability.
Okay. So, as a Terra thrower, I know the Terra comes in like a multitude of plastics as well. And I think initially when we targeted this slot, we were looking down at like the Huia. Did I say it right? Huia?
Pretty close. Yeah.
Huia. You got a Huia.
Yeah. So that one, that RPM disc. And so we were initially looking on there, but hearing Jack describe it as more as a PD, I think now it's like, okay, the Undertaker, like you said, lives in that gap, but somewhere between, let's say, the Felon, you've thrown Felons, and all the way down to you throwing a lot of Craves. So that's obviously a bit of a chasm, and the Undertaker can live there for sure. But which of these discs do you feel like had a lot of flight options? Because that's something we talk about a lot.
Yeah, I think really the Glory, and I honestly just arbitrarily going into this, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to recommend the Terra. It's a great disc. And it's still a great disc, but I've never thrown the Glory. After throwing it today, there was just something about this disc I could just hit really well. And in a headwind, again, it was reliable. It didn't like dunk out on me. I feel like I got distance with it, but I could control it. Even throwing it on Hyzer in a headwind, it's still coming back, but it's not like, it's not zone OS. Like we're not like complete beef here. When from a tailwind, I threw it farther. Again, I was trying to hit it Brad flat, if we will, which is probably not very flat, but I was really trying today to do that. I also saw some more ground action with the Glory, which I'm always a fan of for particular things. Forehand felt really good as well. It did give me an option if I wanted to throw like a flat forehand, which I'm confident I can throw that shot. A flat forehand, it would carry straight, but it would fade out pretty hard for me. It did give me the chop angle if I wanted it. I could do the Hyzer flex forehand, but it wasn't so overstable that I couldn't just throw like a flat forehand or even like a spike like Hyzer forehand. It still was usable in all of those shots. I think it's very usable for a lot of different shots, especially when wind is involved. If I played a lot of windy golf, I think I'm looking at your bag and it looks very similar to like kind of my bag, a Virginia golf bag with woods, some open stuff, but a lot of wood shots, right? It leans more toward that neutral and understable. And I think as you kind of shift your bag more to the stable and overstable side, this is a disc you're going to need because it really offers you a lot of shots. And looking at that like kind of chasm, as Robbie called it on the graph, I think you can find a lot of usability there without having to be like, well, I guess I'll make the Undertaker work for this shot, or I guess I'll make the Felon or the Hui work for this shot. I think this is the Glory is probably what I'd recommend, Robbie.
Okay. So my final question here would be, Jack mentioned the Thunderbird. So he had a Thunderbird where he was trying to make an Undertaker work, or the Undertaker works where he was trying to make a Thunderbird work. Is that right, Jack?
Yeah.
So you are a person that, like, as new to disc golf as you feel, Brad, you have a lot of experience with Thunderbirds because of Halo Thunderbird love. So in comparison, how would you stack a Glory up compared to what a Halo Thunderbird does?
It's its little brother. And that's why I like it. That's why I like it so much. Again, I think the Terra is like a different type of disc. I think there's maybe some overlap with what the Terra would do for you. But yeah, this feels like the Halo Thunderbird's little brother. Like that you didn't have to kill. And like for me, I had to throw a Halo Thunderbird pretty hard to get it to do what I wanted to do. But this, I just felt like it was that, but slower, which is what I loved about it.
Yeah, which is nice because that means I feel like if you're in the wind and you have, or even like there's shot shaping opportunities there to, okay, now I can, you can work a lot more with it when you don't have to throw it as hard to get it to do certain shots. So, Jack, have you thrown a Glory before?
I have not. No, I have thrown a Terra before. When I was doing the all gyro thing, it actually was sort of my orbit Felon. For me, that at least the one that I had, that was sort of where it slotted in. So I'd be 100% down to try the Glory, give that a shot.
Yeah. I think it's just going to give you a different feel. like I said, yeah, the Terra, that's exactly where I'd put it too. If I was just arbitrarily looking at your graph, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's kind of in that felon range. I think it's going to give you a lot more workable overstability, especially as you're getting used to wind, give you something with a little bit of confidence that you can manipulate and use for quite a few shots.
Sweet.
Come on. Well, Jack, would you be willing to come on and let us know after you've had some time to adjust to Texas disc golf and get used to that whole glory world?
Yeah, absolutely. The adjustment's going to have to happen fast. I've got 3 straight weekends after we move down there with tournaments. So
Awesome.
We'll see. Do I live or die by the glory? We'll find out. How about that?
I love it. I love it. Well, Jack, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate having you on, and it was truly a pleasure, and looking forward to seeing that cross country move. We've only had like one other guest, I think, that we've ever had on, and I don't even know if we had him on. I know he's an Atlas guy, but he moved from California golf to Tennessee, and moving from open golf to woods.
Lobster. Yep.
Yeah.
He was on there.
Shocked him.
Shout out Andrew.
Yeah. So looking forward to having you on a future episode, Jack. Thanks again, man.
Thanks so much, guys.
See ya.
Man, another episode down. I think it's very fun, and I like hearing his answer of what part of your bag are you most confident in. All of it makes sense. Like, I totally get that. And I think
knowledgeable guy. Very knowledgeable guy.
And I will say it's tough as like when people have their bag that dialed and that memorized. Once again, this episode was about like shifting and correcting to the wind, and there's going to be lessons to learn. I'm sure that confidence will be tested when he finds himself in new environments.
For sure.
So just enjoyed it, and congrats in advance, Jack, getting married in a couple of weeks, which you guys did not hear off of the line.
Yeah.
So
great. I think that is not the first person. I think we've had 2 or 3 people on that were just previously married or getting married after the episode. So in the Bag Podcast, making weddings happen. You're welcome. If you're about to get married, make sure you come on so we can take credit for that too.
Yeah, it's like a wedding present.
You're welcome.
Anyways, so speaking of presents, some people are going to be like, man, I'm trying to check out some new plastic themselves, and so they're going to head over to foundationdisc.com. Brad, what's new in the warehouse?
All right, the headline this week is Foundation Custom Stamped Tour Series Zone OS and Tour Series Venom. So those are going to go very quickly. Make sure you check those out. If you're a Patreon member, you're actually going to get early access to those for a few minutes. So now's a great time to join Patreon. Use that free trial to your advantage. So make sure you check that out. Robbie's clearly trying not to sneeze. That's very funny. Also, I know I've said this on 1 or 2 episodes, but Clash is actually here now. I touched it. It's going to be up on Friday when you hear this episode. So we got a bunch of it, and even stuff that's not even releasing till next month. So it's all here. All the great stuff that's releasing now. There's some beautiful discs in there, especially some of the glow that's going on. I mean, the mint that is like the clearest plastic I've ever seen in my life. So I'm not sure if that one's releasing now, but there's a lot of Clash going up. So make sure you check out Recently Restocked as always. That's up as well. All you Innova people, all of our Innova is restocked and up for the most part. We got some Trilogy stuff that dropped this week, including Moonshine Orbit Felons that look so sick. And the first hand-eye collab Rico. I was able to order a Rico through Trilogy's website this time. Yeah. Which we know they're under the House of Discs, like that whole company now, that business venture, but it was cool to be able to order that from them with a hand-eye stamp. So, and then I think that's their little test to the world to say, hey, we're kind of in the same company here, so be on the lookout for more of that stuff. But all that's there. MD5, there are a few left of those. The MD5 is sick. I got to throw it from Discmania, so make sure you check that out. All of it is going to be recently restocked. If you're not signed up for our newsletter to tell you about all the new good deals and good discs that are coming out every week, make sure you do that. Patreon free trial. Make sure you check that out. We're so grateful for all of you. I know there's a lot of, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. Thank you to this sponsor. But it's because of all that we do what we do every day, and we love to do what we do. And we do it for you. So please bear with us. But make sure you check it out. And if you go to our website and you grab something, it gets shipped to your door, and you're like, man, this is really good. Where are they going to keep it?
They're going to keep it in the bag. We'll see you guys on the next one.
See ya.